Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast, where smart strength training meets real life. We're Dr. Matt and Nicole Klingler, founders of Village Fitness and Physical Therapy. Here, you'll learn what really works in the gym, at home, and for life. Welcome back to the Strength for Life podcast. I'm Dr. Matt Klingler.
And I'm Nicole Klingler, and we're the founders of Village Fitness and Physical Therapy. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most powerful and underappreciated tools for aging well, walking. Right now, we're in the Village Steps Challenge. So the Village Steps Challenge started last year when Coach Hannah, one of our coaches, said, I want to walk more. And instead of deciding to walk more in, December or January or February when it's a little bit cooler, she decided to pick the hottest month of the year in Southern California.
Yes, she did.
July. And so here we are, year 2. Last year, my team did secure the win, the Green Gliders. And this year, we've done it a little differently. We're doing Glendora versus San Marino. And so things have gotten heated. The steps are way higher this year than last year. And so far, we're off to a great start.
Well, the San Marino team, staff-wise, is winning at present and fairly certain they're going to win because of the level of domination thus far.
We do have some very, very strong members on Team Glendora that are really holding the team, but we're going to need the rest of Team Glendora to step it up.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's get into what the actual research and science says about walking. Is this something that's important? Is it something that you should be doing on a daily basis? How important is this exercise, and what does it actually do for us? And there was a 2023 review in the journal Geriatrics that sums it up pretty well. It says, walking is a safe, accessible, and effective way to promote healthy aging, reduce chronic disease burden, and improve functional mobility in older adults.
The authors emphasize that walking is more than just a form of transportation or leisure. It's actually a therapeutic intervention. So it supports cardiovascular health, balance and fall prevention, bone and joint health, cognitive function, emotional well-being, and maybe the most important, metabolic health, especially with improving insulin sensitivity. And the evidence from the study and many other studies overwhelmingly supports walking as a powerful anti-aging intervention.
So let's talk about the numbers. How many steps do you actually need to do per day? And you've probably heard the 10,000 steps per day figure. And it wasn't actually based on science that number came about. It originated from a Japanese pedometer ad campaign all the way back in 1965. There was a device that was called Manpo Kai, which means 10,000 steps meter, literally. And the character for 10,000 happens to look like a man walking. Clever marketing, no research behind it.
And while 10,000 steps isn't a bad goal, it can feel intimidating, especially for people over 55. But the good news is this.
There was a JAMA study done in 2021 that showed that adults who walked just 7,000 steps per day had a 50 to 70% lower risk of all-cause mortality than those who walked less.
And a women's health study, where the average age was 72, found that benefits started at just 4,400 steps per day, with most of the longevity benefits peaking at around 7,500 steps per day.
So you don't even need 10,000, but you do need more than what the average American gets, which is like in the ballpark of 3,000 to 4,000 steps per day.
So if you look at the blue zones, which are places like Okinawa, Sardinia, Ikaria, these folks walk on average about 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day as a natural part of their life. They get a lot of gardening, they walk to visit their friends, they do a lot of yard work, and they're not really formal workouts. They're just consistent, low-intensity movement.
So these folks live longer than the average American. They live with less disease, they live with more independence, and if you're over 55, you don't necessarily need to walk 10,000 steps per day. But if you want to stay lean, strong, and independent for decades to come, you probably need to walk more than the average person does today. And a lot of people think that walking 10,000, 15,000, or even 20,000 steps per day is extreme. I'll have you know that Nicole regularly walks 40,000 steps per day in the Steps Challenge and then wants me to treat her various ailments and injuries.
That's true. That's true. He is a physical therapist, so you would think that I would just have unlimited.
But I will not be. I'm Team
sessions.
San Marino. She's Team Glendora. I will not be treating the enemy for the next few weeks here during the Steps Challenge. I might treat my wife, but not the enemy. So anyways, there's no model for this high step volume in our culture today. We've been led to believe this lie that we should be sitting in the morning when we eat breakfast. We should sit in our cars on the way to work. We should sit while we're at work, and maybe we sit in our car on the way to the gym, but we sit at the gym on the machines, and we go home, we do more sitting. We sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day long. And there was a 2017 Lancet study on postal workers in Glasgow. And they found that those who walked 15,000 or more steps per day had no signs of metabolic syndrome. Zero. None. Metabolic syndrome is one of the most common diseases in America today, and it plagues the American health system in a really significant way. And these folks that walked 15,000 steps per day didn't have any evidence of it. They also had lower waist circumference, better blood pressure, lower better cholesterol profiles compared to office workers who walked less than 15,000 steps per day.
And their movement wasn't just crammed into a gym session. It was spread out all day long. And I think that this is the key. The beauty of steps as a metric is that you can't fake it. You can't just sit for 12 hours and then suddenly hit 20,000 steps in the last hour of the day. Believe me, I've tried it. There was one day where I was a little bit more sedentary, and then at the end of the day, I got on my walking pad and I thought, oh, I'll just get to 20,000 steps. 2.5 hours later, here I was, probably should have gone to bed, and I didn't. And so I would highly recommend spreading those steps out throughout the day. And you don't need to be an Amazon delivery guy or an Instacart shopper to hit those numbers. You just need intentionality. So we'll give you some specific strategies for how to do that in a few minutes. But if you're debating between walking for an hour in the morning or spreading out that hour across the day, I would choose the latter. Research shows that frequent movement is better for blood sugar regulation and metabolic health than long bouts of exercise with long periods of sitting in between. For example, a 2012 study published in Diabetes Care compared the effects of 3 different activity patterns. So number 1 was uninterrupted sitting, number 2 was an hour of continuous moderate exercise, and number 3 was light walking breaks every 20 minutes. The walking breaks group saw significantly lower post-meal glucose and insulin levels than the prolonged sitting and even the 1-hour workout group. The intervention was simple. Participants stood up every 20 minutes and they walked lightly for 2 minutes. That's it. Yet the effect on blood sugar was greater than doing a full hour of structured exercise once per day.
And this is why we keep saying you can't undo 10 hours of sitting a day with 30 minutes of movement. Your body really wants movement snacks rather than a movement feast throughout the day.
So if you're aiming for better blood sugar, energy, and joint health, sprinkle in 2 to 5 minute walks several times a day. Not only will you feel better, but you'll also rack up more steps and reap more benefits without needing to carve out big chunks of time.
Awesome. So let's tie this into fat loss and losing body weight. So most people think they need a workout to burn calories, but there's something called NEAT that tells a different story. NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and walking is a form of that. And NEAT is basically the calories you're burning when you're not actively exercising. And this actually makes up the biggest part of someone's daily energy burn, even if they're a pretty frequent, intense exerciser. And walking, especially casual walking throughout the day, is one of the most powerful forms of NEAT that we've got. See, when you're at rest, you burn mostly, if not entirely, body fat for fuel. And then contrast that to when you're running or cycling up a steep hill intensely, you're probably burning mostly carbohydrates for fuel. And the more we burn carbohydrates for fuel, the more we end up craving carbohydrates as food. And the more we burn fat for fuel, the more we burn our body fat, and we stay in this kind of fat metabolism. Now, there's a heart rate threshold at which you cross over from burning fat to burning carbohydrates, and it's defined by this formula called the Maffetone formula. So if you take 180 and subtract your age, so I'm 35 years old, so my Maffetone formula puts me right at 145 beats per minute. So anything above 145 beats per minute, I'm starting to burn much more carbohydrates for fuel than fat. Anything less than 145, and I'm burning fat for fuel. Now, walking typically keeps people below the threshold and burns far more calories than just sitting does. It's a purely fat-burning exercise in the most literal sense of the phrase. And you might be like me, and you have friends or family that have gone over to Europe. to France or Italy, and they eat a bunch of carbs and wine. They drink wine, and then they walk all day long, and they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, I lost weight. I don't understand how I could have possibly lost weight with how much food I was eating. And part of that is because of how they process grains there, or don't process them like we do in America. But another big part of that is the walking. They do a ton of walking. And if we contrast walking with something like Orange Theory or boot camp, which is what most people think of as the exercise they need to burn fat, we can start to understand why most people, even exercising Americans, are failing to lose weight and stay lean. So Orange Theory has this kind of point system where the higher your heart rate is, the more calories you're estimated to have burned, and the more points you get at the end of the workout. The goal of the workout is to get the most points possible. And it's really unfortunate because the more points you score, the harder you work, the more you're probably burning sugar and carbohydrates for fuel instead of actually burning body fat. And most people want to burn body fat.
And it's not just that low intensity movement like walking burns fat more efficiently, it also protects your muscle. There's research showing that when people rely on high intensity cardio, especially without enough strength training or recovery, they can actually lose muscle. That's the opposite of what we want as we age. So now let's go into a little bit more about cognition and how walking affects our brains. In the Walking for Healthy Aging article that we mentioned above, they say that gait speed is a strong predictor of both cognitive decline and mortality. Walking interventions may serve as both a preventative and therapeutic modality. One of my favorite parts of this article is how clearly it links walking to reduced fall risk and improved brain function.
There was also a really interesting randomized control trial that showed that older adults who began a walking program improved their cognitive flexibility and their working memory after just 12 weeks.
Faster walking speed is also a biomarker of brain health, and a slower gait has been associated with an increased risk of dementia and all-cause mortality, which I won't really need to worry about because I'm known as nonstop Nicole, and everyone knows that I walk at a very fast speed.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not everyone
if they don't know,
is
you're
slow
gonna tell
like
them
Matt
about
the
it,
cat.
huh? Yeah, that's right.
That's Matt's walking challenge name, or step challenge name, Matt the cat.
So let's talk about shoes next. What type of shoes should you wear when you go out walking? Now, we are big fans of barefoot shoes. We sell Zero shoes at Village. Nicole and I are wearing Zero shoes right now. And that's what we wear most, if not all of the day, a lot of days. I wear like a dress shoe version to work. I'll wear another version when I'm just around the house or outside. However, if you are somebody that is trying to get into a walking routine, I guess I should back up a little bit. Barefoot shoes are fantastic because they allow your toes to spread out naturally and splay like they're designed to, and it brings your heel down to the ground so that it's almost like being barefoot, except it has a layer of protection between you and the environment, because our feet were never really designed to be on pavement. And so the barefoot shoe allows you to be on pavement and protects you from the stuff that's on the pavement, sharp things, debris, etc. So now if you're new to walking or trying to walk 40,000 steps per day like Nicole, you're probably not going to have a great experience wearing a barefoot shoe solely. Folks end up with plantar fasciitis or Achilles tendonitis, and they get frustrated and they quit. So you're probably going to want a more padded shoe like a Hoka or a New Balance or Brooks or something like that if you're ramping up your volume or doing a lot of walking on pavement. Back like 10 years ago, I hiked Half Dome with Nicole, and I've been wearing barefoot shoes pretty consistently, and I thought, you know what, I'll just wear barefoot hiking shoes and do this hike. And if you've done Half Dome before, you know it's like 7 miles up, it's really steep, and then 7 miles back down. And I remember I woke up the next morning and my Achilles tendon on my left side was so stinking sore, and it lasted for months. Dealt with Achilles tendonitis for months. And I don't think the problem was the barefoot shoes. The problem was that I wasn't adapted to hiking in barefoot shoes. So before you do something like that, you want to build up and adapt to it. Now, Dr. Justin on our staff in Glendora is doing a marathon at the end of this year, and he's actually training for and going to do the entire thing in barefoot shoes. But he's a lot smarter than I was back 10 years ago, and he is slowly and steadily building up for that event. He started with a half mile, and then a mile, and then a mile and a half, and 2 miles, and now he's worked his way up to 13 or 14 miles at present, all in barefoot shoes, and he's documenting the whole thing. It's pretty cool, and he's doing great. So his body has actually built up the strength and structural integrity it needs to run in barefoot shoes. When I trained to do the John Muir Trail a couple years ago, we were hiking 30 miles a day for a week straight. We absolutely needed a more padded shoe with a heel lift just to give us enough margin to get through that volume of walking. So for you want to figure out what shoe is best for you in your current stage. If you're somebody that, let's say walks 5,000 steps per day and you're trying to bump it up to 6,000, you've already been doing your walking in barefoot shoes and you're fine, it's probably okay. If you're somebody that's been wearing padded shoes for all of your walking and you just want to flip a switch and go to a barefoot shoe, I would start by just wearing them to the gym, maybe wearing them around the house, and then slowly and steadily introduce them into your walking so that you don't end up with plantar fasciitis or Achilles tendonitis or some other foot or knee issue.
I think just a side note too on that is we always would recommend that when you're in the gym doing strength training that you're barefoot or in barefoot shoes. Having a padded shoe can be really detrimental to both your balance, your stability. It can actually make you more likely to injure yourself when you're strength training. So this is purely just for walking.
Yeah. Cool.
Right.
So we get to go on to the tips?
Yeah.
Ready?
Let's do it. So now we're going to talk about some tips, like we mentioned earlier, on how to get more steps in the day. So the first tip, and I think the most important, if you take anything away from this podcast, is to wear a step tracker. So there was a 2022 meta-analysis in the Lancet Digital Health that analyzed 38 randomized controlled trials, including over 16,000 participants. They found that people who used wearable activity trackers walked an average of 1,800 more steps per day. They lost 2.2 pounds more, and those studies ranged anywhere from 8 to 26 weeks. And they also had improved blood pressure and glucose control. So just like anything else, when you're tracking it and it's top of mind and you're aware of it, you're more likely to pay attention to it and to prioritize it. It's the same thing with your sleep, your nutrition. So get a step tracker. It doesn't matter which one it is. We both have the Aura. We also both have Garmin watches that we wear. That just gives you more feedback right away because you can actually see your steps in real time. Whereas Aura, you have to look at your phone to see how many steps you have. But honestly, even just the $15 step tracker on Amazon works great. So whatever you have to do to track your steps, make it happen.
Nice. Number 2 is to take walking calls or meetings. So recently during our steps challenge, Nicole and I have been doing any meeting we possibly can walking. So if we're meeting with a staff member, we will go out for a walk. And if I need to take notes, I'll often just bring my phone out, turn on the voice record feature, and then throw the transcript into ChatGPT to summarize after the meeting. And I find that we come up with better ideas, we're more productive, and we get a bunch of steps while we're out there. And you can also do the same thing when you're chatting on the phone with people. Just use that as an opportunity to get up, to walk around. If you're in an office, maybe just pace back and forth just to get a little bit of movement in throughout the day.
Our third tip is to use a walking pad or a treadmill desk. So our good friend Renee, she has been using one for about the last year. And so she recommended one a while ago. She went through one that she said lasted just, a few months and then it stopped. And so she recommended one. So now I think we have 4 across our locations. And unfortunately, they are now being fought over pretty much every hour of the day. People have named their walking pads. Wow. And it's gotten really intense. But it's been great. It's been something that has just allowed everyone to get more steps in, to stay active. And I have found that if it's not at too quick of a speed and you're standing, I actually focus better than when I'm just trying to stand at a standing desk. So if you have the ability to get a walking pad, like I said, they're not super expensive on Amazon. They're anywhere from like $100 to $200. I would highly recommend getting one, especially if you sit at a desk all day.
So the 4th tip is to walk and listen to audiobooks. And recently I was just walking by my couch and realized that I haven't sat on it since the walking challenge started on July 6th. I was like, wow, that's so weird. I haven't even sat on that couch for now like a week and a half. First world problems here. So one of the best tips I have is to take anything you can do reading and see if you can do it with an audiobook. So go listen to the audiobook as you walk. And that's something that I do every morning now when I'm in the Steps Challenge. And I think something I want to continue doing after the Steps Challenge is over is doing my morning reading as morning listening and going out for a walk.
Our fifth tip is to walk between sets at the gym. This is one of my favorite things to do with clients in our small group training program is instead of just sitting or standing is to just move around. Often it just helps keep your joints mobile. You feel better when you just do really, really light activity. It also just helps you to focus more and to think about like, what am I going to do next? Whereas if you just sit and kind of zone out, or most people at the gym, they'll just like look at their phone. It really doesn't help your body prepare for that next heavy set. And so, if you have rest in between sets, which you should, if you're working out at the gym and strength training, then walk between sets.
And then number 6 is to get accountability or join a challenge. I think clients of ours, staff, we walk so much more when we're in the steps challenge. Like Nicole and I are averaging like Nicole's averaging more than 30,000 steps per day. I'm a little bit less than that. I'm a little bit embarrassed about it, but it's okay. When we're not in the steps challenge, I think I'm more like 10,000, 12,000 steps per day. So literally less than half. And it's something about competition and wanting to dominate Team Glendora has really motivated me to get out and walk a lot more.
Right. Our next tip is to set a step reminder. So every hour, I would say try to walk, even just the 2 minutes, like we talked about in that study earlier, just 2 minutes every 20 minutes or so. 20 minutes can maybe feel too short. So I think an hour is a good time period. You can honestly just set a reminder on your phone for every hour. Even better, a lot of step trackers have that built in as a function, and you can change the duration of that. But just that reminder of like, oh, I do need to get up and walk. And you'll actually notice too, especially if you're sitting down for work, if you get up and walk for say 2 minutes, you'll actually have more focus and the ability to concentrate better if you get up and walk for a couple minutes and then sit back down and continue working.
Nice. And the last one is to walk after every meal. Even just 5-10 minutes is helpful. We both wore continuous glucose monitors for about 3 months at the start of this year. And one of the things I found that reduced my after meal blood sugar the most was going for a walk. I remember we went out to dinner one night and had a big steak dinner. We both had potatoes and I don't remember what else, but it was like a good amount of carbohydrates, meat, protein. And we both went after dinner and we walked for like 30 minutes and I barely saw a bump in my blood sugar after that meal, which was really interesting. It's like, well, obviously it would have been a huge spike in blood sugar because of how much we ate, but the 30-minute walk after just totally nullified it. So going for a walk right after you eat, and the research that's been done on this is pretty clear. The walk needs to be immediately after eating. So don't do the dishes, don't clean up, just go for a walk if possible, and then come back and get your stuff done. And then I think it's important to note that you don't have to get all of your steps at once. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. Movement is medicine only if you take it in the right doses.
So remember, if you took anything away from this, try to get more steps, try to get them more often. That's going to be the formula for better energy, better blood sugar, and better aging.
So to wrap things up, if strength training is what keeps you capable, walking is what keeps you moving. And together, they are the movement antidote to frailty, disease, and cognitive decline.
So start where you are, track your steps, walk daily. I would say try to increase your steps. So say right now, if you're starting at 3,000 steps a day, then try to increase it to 4,000 steps and slowly progress that. Don't try to jump in all at once.
Yeah.
And then I would say add in strength training. So walking is great, but if you subtract the strength training from it, it's not going to have nearly as many benefits. And it's a really great complement to strength training. So I always tell clients like the best thing that you can do in between strength training sessions is to go for a walk on the days that you're not in the gym. And then watch what happens in 30 days and see how your body feels.
Awesome. Well, until next time, this is the Strength for Life podcast, and we will see you soon.